part, my self-esteem has been pretty high of late. When I was telling people I was going to speak today, be a keynote speaker, I was very encouraged by it. They're like, really? Where? Where is this going to happen? I said, Rome. Everyone thought I was leaving for Rome in Italy. And here I am, but they'll know, I think, by the time I get back after only one day, one personal day, they'll probably be like, oh, okay, he was just in Rome, New York. But I'm really honored to be here. Let's just get into it. Yes, I've probably, over my whole time working at Camp of the Woods for 5 years, I've probably acquired over 1,500 leads, from classroom announcements, tabling, just raw one-to-one, recruiting through blueprint texts, email marketing. My background is not in business. I went to school for music therapy. I actually had my master's in it, and I had a passion for music and in counseling and with people, and that was my focus, and now here I am, speaking in front of all of you, and I've been recruiting manager at Camp of the Woods for really 5 years now, but I still have that passion. I'm still doing things like that, which is pretty cool. But for the most part, just know that I actually ended up getting a job in hospice music, in music therapy, my background in that. A lot of the stuff we're going to talk about today relates to that background in psychology. Different therapeutic techniques are kind of woven into that, research you'll see in the beginning of this presentation. So let's just dive into it. So really my goal of this presentation is to talk about just two things, understanding Generation Z and recruiting Generation Z. Now the biggest caveat I want to say before any of this is that these are generalizations about mass groups of people. So some people might think, that's not really me, I don't really identify with that. And yet that's probably true. And there's actually a lot of disagreement amongst the researchers that I have that, the time frame of Generation Z and all these things. So just know that, and probably the best thing I can tell you before we even begin is that the best way to recruit and also understand someone is to know on an individual level. That is the best thing you can do. This talk about these generalizations are also part of that, but really have your heart be in the right place about it, and I think it'll be great. So we're going to first talk about understanding Generation Z. So we're going to give an overview of it, right? So the age range, 1995 to 2009, again, this is something that's kind of debated, so just know that. Raise your hand if you think you're Generation Z in here. Yeah, millennials in the room, all right, Gen X, all right, maybe, right? We'll understand more. Again, so the Generation Z population, based off of this research from 2023, is about 20% of the population, right? That is Generation Z. This makes up 27% of the workforce, and it's only growing. They're only growing. Generation Z is probably going to overtake, most generations out there pretty well, until they make a new generation probably, right? But it is something that is emerging. You'll see the data there. And this is something that you'll continue to hear me refer back to, a primary social marker, right? So in a lot of these generations, like millennials, now 9/11 was a huge generational event that they remember at a very formative time in their childhood, and that impacted much of these generalizations and tendencies and traits that I'm going to be referring to. For Generation Z, it was the Great Recession, right? The global financial crisis in 2008. So it's just something that's useful to know. You're probably wondering, who is Generation Z? How do I refer to this? It's a great question. Maybe you know some of these people, fictional or not. Sweet Tom Holland / Peter Parker, Spider-Man, spoiler alert. He is part of Generation Z by this age demographic. Billie Eilish, Timothy Chalamet, Lisan Al-Gaib, Dune, no? Anyone know who that is, that woman at the bottom? Yeah. Charlie D'Amelio, go Bills. I threw that in there because I thought y'all would like that. Josh Allen, he's right on the lines. And Zendaya, Mr. Beast. Anyone know who that is? If you have kids, maybe you know who that is. And Greta Gerwig, yes, social activist. And then, look at that. Me, technically. I am a Generation Z, right? I'm 29 years old. Maybe I'm a zillennial, right? There are some of these things I absolutely identify with. Some of them I don't, right? Again, know your employees on an individualized level. But again, this stuff can really help us understand people at a broader scale, right? And that helps us on the individual level. So this is what I'm going to mainly be talking about today. I have identified through like reading like psychology like articles, different things on counseling, lifespan of human development. I've taken 5 traits of Generation Z, and this is going to be the whole like layout of the presentation, about understanding these traits, and then how do we recruit them through these traits, right? There's definitely more than this, but these are the 5 I think that are most relevant to us as employers. So diving into it, all right? So this is something that obviously, probably the first thing my grandma would say to me is like, oh, they're on their phones, they're digital natives, right? So this is of no surprise to really anybody. This generation, even more than any generation in history, is just walked into a technological renaissance. I can stream The Office and Parks and Rec. I can watch any movie I want. I have access to countless forms. Like, I saw the birth of the iPhone, and now it's just a computer in my pocket, and it just feels pretty casual. Does anyone feel like it's pretty remarkable? But AI, all this stuff, we're digital natives, right? Gen Z, this is so normal to them, right? Normalcy is something that just happens continuously, and it just becomes this thing of like, we're not really enamored by it. It's just something we've been born into, right? So that's what a lot of research suggests. You've heard probably about the iPad kid. There he is. He looks really wholesome though, doesn't he? He seems really nice. So again, this is like, it's just a normal thing to Generation Z. Again, that's just something, I'm talking about traits as far as objectively as I can, and then we'll dive into kind of how that reacts, right? So we'll keep going here. The next trait I've identified is pragmatism. This one I love this one. This might surprise a lot of you. Like, millennials are kind of sometimes interwoven with Gen Z, and because they're the most talked about generation in history, actually. Millennials are the most talked about generation in history. That is what the research suggests. And they often get mistaken for being very idealistic and like, I love travel, I love experiencing things. That's big about millennial culture, right? I want to, 9/11 is a primary social marker. They saw a horrific terror attack, and they just said, I need to make the most out of life, right? That's something about millennials. That's not what this presentation is about. But Gen Z often gets kind of like thrown into that camp, and they're not really in that. Research suggests, way more pragmatic. They're more realistic, They're actually referred to as like very data-driven. I have reasons for this I'll explain, but I think a lot of that pragmatism, again, from that primary social marker, right? The global financial crisis, it has made them like see the world and say, wow, I saw my parents at a very influential time of my life when I'm really becoming cognizant, struggle financially. So here I am now. I need to understand. That's what brought me to that. And by the time I got to school, I felt like this is something that I feel is another like word for I have this trait. I think self-esteem is on the negative side of it, has even gotten more like worse for Generation Z. When they see everybody's going to college, they see all of like, you can Google GPAs at different schools, you can like kind of access all this information. It could really be just more of just all this pressure, right? This is something I've talked to a lot of my fellow peers on, and they feel it. I'm sure everyone feels this at a young age, but especially with what I've seen from high schools and colleges, their standards are only going up because more people are filtering into their schools, right? So it's something that's just there. And then obviously you've maybe heard about this internship, right? I hear kids in high school who are like, I need to get an internship. What? What are you talking about, man? That's how it wasn't for me. One internship right before you graduate from your undergrad was the precedent. It is clear that there is more pressure, and I think a lot of it is because of high college attainment, but also because I think this generation has had such an access to information, they feel, man, I really do need to, I need to achieve highly. Other people are, so should I. So, right along. This one's obvious, social responsibility. Again, just because of that access to information, you'd see, diversity, equity, inclusion, environmentalism, and sustainability. Leo DiCaprio, I love Leo DiCaprio. He's talking about the environment, man. Let's go, that's incredible, right? Barack Obama was a president, and right at that time of life in 2008, talking about change, you're like, oh my gosh, this diversity is important. Actually, the point, it's so normal. That's the expectation of Generation Z. They really value inclusivity. They really value that intentionality, right? And something even more, I would say, is that 93%, this is like from a research that's, I highlight that, you can take it to the bank, especially if you work at a bank, is that 93% of Gen Z, they choose their jobs based off of like the purpose that is behind it. Like, oh my gosh, if you're working in the medical industry, or like if you're working at a bank or wherever you're gonna work, if the messaging is not like consumer driven, these students are just gonna be like, what is it all for? Why does it matter? That's such a big thing I'm gonna come back to a little later, especially with this next one, with skepticism. This is my favorite trait that I've identified. It sounds like less objective than the other ones, but if you really think about everything that's out there in culture with Generation Z and what they've been brought into, all of these bring it back. The pragmatism, the digital natives, the high expectations, right? They've had all this access to information since they came into the world. And they feel that. And more than anything right now, there is a lot of stuff that people have seen, like maybe early on, they're like, wow, I have all this information. But as things have gone on, people are fact-checking everybody now. Like you kind of see that, the world, nothing's new under the sun. There's a lot of just things that there's a lot of holes in the Swiss cheese, right, of life. And they feel it and they've seen it. I mean, I've seen countless things. There's a few examples, right? Misinformation in news, inauthenticity in media today, right? Everyone go on Instagram and they're looking at reels. This one woman tells me, you don't have to. Actually, soap and water, you don't need, the whole thing about cast iron skillets? They're like, oh man, you cannot, don't touch that with soap and water. Which yes, I do that now, right? But I just saw someone the other day. I don't know what to believe. She's saying, it's fine. That was misinformation from big telethon, whatever they're called. Those Teflon, big Teflon is trying to lie to us, man. I don't know what to believe, man. It's on Instagram. How can I fact check that even, right? So, I've heard a couple of other things, right? Like fat makes you fat. Avocado has fat. That's incredible, right? Eggs raise cholesterol, but that's actually a good thing, not a bad thing, right? There's just tons of things that are out there right now that who wouldn't feel skeptical in today's day and age? But imagine if you grew up with that, then what are you going to really believe, right? And there's even a lot of things. Again, I've come from a religious background. Postmodernism, right? It's such a big movement right now. It's like, man, truth is very relative, and it's not really. There's not a lot of absolutes in life. Actually, the line is very blurred, and that's something that, however you feel about it, is true, and it's permeating into culture for sure. That is something that is absolutely there. So skepticism is 100% within Generation Z. It's a great thing to think about. So that was an information dump, right? And I do talk fast, but that was a lot of information, right? We're going to now bring it into the realm of understanding, kind of that understanding will bring us to a better place of learning how to recruit through that understanding, right? So all that research was helpful. We talked about digital natives, pragmatism, having high expectations, right? Low self-esteem, it's attached to those high expectations. They're socially responsible, and of course, skeptical, right? So get it right into the first one. So if they're digital natives, right? And this is, if you want to take notes, again, we're going to pass this presentation along at some point. But this is stuff that this is not research. This is Adam search. This is me going through life. I've recruited a lot of people of this generation. And these are things that we do that work. I'm going to kind of give a value attached to that objective trait that I've identified through research. And I'm going to give illustrations, many of which that we use that could be beneficial to you, right? So if they are digital natives, then they probably value digital experience, right? I've had so many students I've seen, we used to be still on Adobe Flash. I don't know if that means anything to anybody, but to me, I'm like, oh man, right? If you're a tech guy, you're like, what? In 2019, we changed our website away from Adobe Flash. There was a hamburger menu of 3 lines. You had to click on it, and you'd see everything about Camp of the Woods. We have 5 ministry arms. We have 8 different applications for employment. My goodness, what a nightmare! For me, I was like, ugh, how did I work here when I was a college student? This is just nothing about it was user friendly. Nothing about it was accessible, right? That's something that we value. That's something that I absolutely value. So the best thing you can do as a recruiting tactic, right, or just an initiative or something, and many of you are probably doing this, your digital touch points. You've really got to refine them. This is so vital. This is where it begins. And my philosophy in recruiting, especially when you have a skeptical generation, you got to get them to the next stage of the funnel, just the next step, because they're not going to be committal. We'll talk about that later. But it's probably a lot of you struggling with retention, I'm sure, right? But getting them to the next stage of the funnel, it's very tricky. If you sell them at the table or in a classroom announcement, and they're like, oh man, this sounds incredible. I really need a job, and this sounds great. They're going to go to your website. Y'all got to spend some money and filter that into your website if it isn't good enough yet. Because that is the biggest touch point, and if it's not narratively driven, making them the hero and hitting on these 5 traits, that's the biggest thing you could do right now. Along with SEO, search engine optimization, right? Like these algorithms that are out there, I've had more and more people since 2019 to now tell me, I'm like, how did you find out about Camp of the Woods? I Googled it, looked up Christian camps. It's not staggering number, but it was 0 in 2019. And we get about 600 applications every single year for summer, just for summer. And I've probably seen that number, this is how statistics can be deceptive, right? Increased by 500%. 5 people now for the past 2 years have told me they found out about us through Google. It's a pretty decent number, especially for just like a camp ministry, right? This is a big deal. Instagram, a lot of these people are gonna look, all right, what's their vibe? What do they got going on? They're gonna go on your Instagram and they're gonna see, what's the kind of the energy? Is it youthful? And oh man, if they don't like what they see, they might not even, apply, right? So this is something that's important. Linktree is a great resource. I have links that are in this that take you to our touch points. I have visual examples, but when you have the slideshow, you can look at them yourself. But does anyone know what Linktree is? So this is like on Instagram, you have a link in your bio. You only really get one, you maybe get 2 now, but you click on that, and it has all these different touch points that you can give people. It's really cool. Write it down, look into it. It's cool. Generation Z is like just very natural to them. So touch points, these are a couple examples of what we got going on. Oh my goodness, dialogue. If this generation is skeptical, they're pragmatic, they're non-committal, you got to have these digital touch points that are going to filter them to want to talk to you. Especially, and I'm tabling, this is another thing I've seen. I'll be at a table, and a kid will come up to me. He'll look me right in the face. He'll take out his phone. He'll just scan our QR code. And he'll apply, and he'll be great. No, believe it. Like, it sounds like, I don't want anyone who's going to not socially interact with me. That's Generation Z, man. And he actually was like an awesome applicant. I'm like, bro, what's your deal, man? I tried to professionally develop him later. I'm like, you can't really do that, man. You got to shake hands. Like, hi, how are you? Eye contact, right? But that's this generation, and it's only getting worse. I'm not even going to talk about Generation Alpha. So, again, you guys, create a dialogue, right? Oh, at the bottom of our application, I was already at the top. Interested in summer staff? Let's talk. Just create a dialogue. Get their information, get a lead, follow it, right? We even have iconography. Anyone know what that is? It's like the hamburger menu, the 3. It's not going to say hamburger menu, or it's not even going to say menu. Generation Z, they're grown up with this stuff. They just know. I just look at something. My poor dad, he's like, Adam, what do I do? How do I was like, well, Dad, just click on this. I'm native, right? It's all just so easy to me, right? And it's okay. But these iconography, it means a lot more to them, right? They say, okay, it's simple. I can see kind of everything right in front of me, right? And then touch points to the application, all that good stuff. I could spend a lot of time on this. For the sake of time, we'll keep moving, right? It'll be good. Now, pragmatism, right? This one is one that, oh my goodness, everybody's like, are you sure? Yes, 100%. And we have changed even how we recruit since 2019. I kind of inherited it, and just a good example, we had faith, community, memories was like the big 3 values, the narrative about the summer staff program. Gen Z is like, I love that, right? No, millennials are like that. Gen Z, I changed it to faith, growth, like professional development, community, because of the pressures that they're feeling, because of so much what's going on, right? So let's dive into it. So if many more people are going to college and the things are way more competitive than they used to be before, they really value stability and growth. Those two words and like the value of Gen Z, they value really having stability and growth for their opportunities, right? Especially professionally. So a recruiting tactic I would just suggest to anybody is to really focus on logos-driven recruiting materials. You probably heard ethos, pathos, logos, right? Logos is data-driven. It's logic. It's Latin. Thought that was funny. I'm going to make a lot of jokes, I'm sorry, for those watching on the presentation. But yeah, so again, a couple examples of that, right, is it's transparency about compensation, right, and just walking them through it. I'm having a call with like one of my four-time summer staffer who's in a different position that's a little bit less pay because it's a little different, and she's like, I want to know why that is. And there's definitely a reasoning. She wants me to walk her through it, right? And after I talk her through it, and if it makes sense, she'll be like, oh, okay. It happens all the time. An interview process that isn't just about you interviewing them. You should get in front of talking to them about everything. Just tell them all this information, because I've seen more and more of these students, whether they're professional or not, write things down in their phones because they really have access to this information. They value it. Employee testimonials, right? This is something that hits on a lot of like not just logos, but pathos too. The emotions of like, oh, seeing someone else, and ethos. But I feel like if they see someone else their age talking about it, kind of as a one-to-one, wow, practical. Whoa, this person's my age, and they like it too. Maybe I'd like it. And then data-driven job descriptions. This is an example I'm going to give. Testimonials, you see that, right? But this, I can't probably read it, but this is the biggest thing I've kind of initiative I took in 2020, and has been the most visited touch point on our website. We have 50 different positions. Talk about a hassle, right? A lot of different pools we're fishing in. But we've laid out very clearly and plainly, but also aesthetically pleasing. Wow, we did this all in Canva. Doesn't it look nice? They're looking at these responsibilities, and students will get energized. Like, oh my gosh, that is so me. This is very, it's narrative driven. It's good marketing materials, right? But it's data focused. Will I have what it takes to do this job? Will it meet my expectations, right? Which we'll get into the next thing, right? This term of advancement leverage. I need to compete in today's job market. The job market right now is for some people, right? And a lot of these kids right out of college, they're telling me, feels pretty destitute. They feel so overwhelmed. They don't feel like they're getting an edge, right, in this world. So much about this high expectations is giving them competitive edge. But narrative-focused recruiting, right? They're the hero of the story, right? You need to see them on an individual level with these 5 traits in mind. So if they're someone who's like a big fish and they're awesome young kid, and you really want to sell them, be like, listen to their story and say, how does this help them professionally succeed? And think longevity, right? And this is such a big thing because advancement leverage this is something I'm seeing, and it's a seasonal job for us. But I've woven in the fact that you can work in a Christian environment because all of our staff value that, right? The people apply there, but not lose steam professionally. It is probably the most compelling thing. I'll speak in a class of 20 psychology students, and I'll get 13 people to write their name down and show interest based off of that alone. You want to get a job someday? Well, we're a professionally developmental environment. We're going to invest in you. You are going to be better for coming here. And the job market out there is pretty rough. I hype it all up because it's true. And they're like deer in the headlights, and then they lock in and they're like, this is the kind of environment I want to be in. Supportive, enriching to them as an individual, right? So recruiting tactic is college jargon, right? However you feel about college, you should probably adopt what they're saying. If 3 to 4 internships is what's required now in college, right? Like many schools, they just say we have to, or some of them don't, and these kids just feel that pressure. Regardless, bring that language, that vernacular, that jargon into like kind of your marketing materials. It will help you by far attract probably less expensive employees and interns that you can invest in and develop and then see some longevity in, but more than anything, college graduates, which that's like the wellspring of so many of obviously just job markets in general, right? Especially in an area like this, right? So Use things like, we have internships. Say this if you believe it, and then put some accountability into it, right? Like have nice people that are going to mentor them, right? And invest in them. But hard and soft skill development is what their teachers are telling them. The hard skills of what they're going to learn and have responsibilities in, they're more tangible, be developed in. But then also the soft skills. If you're at a job that's not as hard skill driven, I talk to people about guest services all the time, where there's going to be driving golf carts and talking to sweet old ladies. That's really most of the job. But they also have a lot of critical thinking skills they have to do and problem solving. They are a resource to the guests for anything from a door unlocking to, a junior throws his rock at the back of someone's sedan and there's glass everywhere. What do? Well, we teach our staff in customer service and de-escalation training. You will gain incredible soft skills serving 7,000 to 8,000 people in a summer. Data, whoa, pragmatism, there it is. They're going to be like, this is what I have to do for my summer because it's going to help them along in their professional journey, right? And again, majors, look at these schools and find out what they call their if the health looks so different across so many different schools. I've seen kinesiology, or I can't even pronounce it. Thank you. I've seen exercise science, and then they all have these different specializations, but some of these kids are kind of all in this pocket a lot of the times, and they're kind of looking at a specific path, and their school only offers something specific. So research those colleges and find out, all right, what is our programs, like how do they relate, right? All right. So there's a couple examples of what we do. Again, tangible experience, hard and soft skills. We say these things in our language, launch successfully, right? We also have a couple things here. We do professional development seminars in the summer to kind of help them along that journey. Again, all of it's about this advancement leverage. How do I get ahead? Is a summer there going to help me do that? Is a job at one of these institutions going to help me move along and progress in my professional journey? So, socially responsible. Again, you already saw the fact that 93% choose their job opportunities because it's something that's going to be like purpose-driven, something that they value. If you can find, and I think there's value in any work. Like as a Christian, that's something that actually, you can glorify God with whatever you're doing. That's me as a Christian, but I know so many people. I went to a school at a secular environment that would say, absolutely anything you can do can have meaning and value. Find it, right? The world is only becoming more negative, but there's absolutely so much good in some of these jobs that can have meaning to them, even if they're a desk job. If you're working with people in any capacity and making a difference, that's incredible. And if you can really find a way to shape that narrative, it's just really good. And again, think about the things I'm talking about, sure, but the recruiting tactics I would suggest is really investing in things that they value. If you don't have those things yet, like maybe think about how much effort can we really put in and how much money would it really cost? Probably not as much. It would really just take time to developing different programs that were bringing young people in to an environment that they would find conducive to their learning, be collaborative, but would actually help them kind of grow professionally. We do a whole seminar in the summer. It's on self-care. From a more of a biblical Christian viewpoint, and in ministry, there's so much about dying to yourself in Scripture, but it's something that I don't think that in Christianity they talk about enough. Like, obviously, we need to value self-care. We need to value kind of how we approach life and stuff like that, and taking care of our bodies and taking care of our minds, our hearts. And that's something that I said, this has nothing to do with the responsibilities. This is not a one-to-one like customer service training. Oh, I'm going to learn how to do customer service. It's so directly related. This was something I was like, I just feel like they'd really resonate with it. I have students still texting me today. They're like, man, I really was so enriched by that thing you taught us about, this self-care. I've really been thinking about it. They'll text me, they'll engage with me in that because it's something that they value and it had nothing to do with their responsibilities. Really think about that. What can we think about that these students would value or these young professionals would value that could be conducive to their lives? So, yeah, overall, this is probably the biggest thing, right? Any organization, clear messaging, communicating your values, servant leadership is something that we talk about not only in the Christian world, but at Camp of the Woods. We serve 7,000 to 8,000 people in a summer. And if we have 40 housekeepers, and it's a week-to-week resort for families, nearly 1,000 accommodations, we're probably going to do a lot of housekeeping there, right? Every Saturday, the 40 housekeepers and 6 hours cannot turn all of Camp of the Woods. So a core value, what we explain to everybody at Camp of the Woods is like, be prepared to serve in areas that are like not directly related to your position. We're very clear about it, very direct, but my HR office assistants, my accounting and finance assistants, my marketing people, I tell everybody, servant leadership, be prepared to serve. Everybody helps on Changeover Day. And this is something that obviously, would you want to do housekeeping on a Saturday for 6 hours when you're coming here for an internship that's more prestigious, right? Absolutely not. So I had a guy named Steve Rowinski. He's one of my mentees. He was there. I didn't really know him that well yet. I heard a whisper that he wants to leave because he's just tired of doing changeovers. He's like, man, I came here for this like rec job. I want to be on the climbing wall. I want to do all this stuff. He was discouraged. And I could have easily said, well, we've communicated these values, man. We've told everybody in the interview, in the contract, this is what you're expected to do. Prepare for that. And instead of that, I said, you know what? Let me think real quick. We can't just say what we're doing, right? Gen Z values authenticity. They are like a little bit against the man, to be honest with you. They're like kind of like, something I could have put in here. But Steve was feeling discouraged about it, so I said, my boss told me, he's like, what if you just went and worked alongside him? So I said, okay. I went over and I worked with him for 6 hours. Didn't say a word. He said he was going to leave on Sunday. That's what people were telling me, right? I just worked with him for 6-7 hours. It was a hard day, too. Terrible. So many guests here. And he has been coming back for 3 summers now. And he actually told me a week later, he said, it was so impactful to see that you guys weren't only just telling us something that sucks about your job, you were living it out too. And that translates beyond religion. I'm telling you right now, this is a skeptical generation. They really value authenticity. They really value truth, right? They're going to question, like, wait, well, why can't you do this too? And there's going to be some things, right, that you absolutely have to delegate, and you don't have to get, boots on the ground. But I'm telling you right now, I absolutely encourage you to like find moments, small little moments to say, how can I like come down to the a young person's level, relate to them, and then and show that I really believe in what we're preaching here, what we're teaching these students. It is the single, probably like one of my shining moments in my career, just coming down and having humility and doing something alongside it. And now I do it as a practice. I structure it out so it's not as inconvenient. Every Saturday, big touch point, I'm up at the dining hall for an hour. And people always think, who have known me for years, did you get demoted? I always ask, like, what happened? What happened to HR? I was like, I'm here, man. They're here, so I'm here every Saturday, like 5:30. And my students look forward to me every single time. And I'm a good worker, man. I know what I'm doing. I've been there for a long time, right? So I'm boots on the ground, and they're relating to me. They see me in a different place. And I do the same thing with changeovers. I'm walking around, we're giving out snacks, right? We're meeting them where they are. Not feeling above from them, because that's probably where you were at one point. You're feeling like the man is getting you down, right? Or there's people above you that are like, do they really believe what they're saying? It's easier said when they're saying and not doing it. It's really something to think about. Okay, so again, my favorite traits, right? And there's a lot of tactics I could have said that are a little bit more like, business jargon and stuff like that, but I tried to just, I can't talk for forever. This is probably one tactic I think is just super helpful. It's nuts and bolts recruiting. If really they're skeptical, they're gonna value truth, right? They're gonna value authenticity, right? So recruiting tactic I would suggest is the sandwich method. Have anyone heard of that before? It's just simple, right? It's 2-to-1 ratio, positive to negative. But the negative comes right in the middle. Now, you need to do this authentically. You can't have it just be deceptive. I'm telling you, they will double check. This is a very pragmatic generation. They're very skeptical. So if I'm talking about something relating to Camp of the Woods, I have to be transparent, have to be authentic with how I'm presenting it. So that relates to knowing an objective, right? So work hours. Camp of the Woods, people work 48 to 53 hours per week. 6-day work week. That's 1 day off and several shifts off throughout the week. You live and you work here, but it's hard work, Camp of the Woods, man. Most people work a 40-hour work week, and it's hard work. We don't sugarcoat that. So sandwich method relating to that objection, right? If I was a college student and I love my summers and I can't wait, I'm looking forward to just having my freedom and my free time, balling with my boys and hanging out and enjoying myself, right? I'm probably not going to want to work my butt off in the summer, right? Like, so I tell all my interns, it's like, you really got to be prepared for any of these objections. Know the objections. One of ours is work hours. So, the first thing I'll say, because even though we're, called Camp of the Woods, we're not a camp, if you'd believe me. We're a Christian family resort. It's a 125-year-old name, and 7,000 to 8,000 people come there for a summer, but it's not like the kid counselor camp you've seen in Parent Trap with like the two Lindsay Lohans. It's not that way, right? It is it's a Christian resort, so we operate differently. This is part of the spiel I give in every interview at the end of whether we're going to hire them or not. We're giving them that transparency. I tell them what Camp of the Woods is, but I eventually get to a place where I'm going to tell you some cons now, right? I'm going to tell you about the work environment. It's rigorous, but I'll tell you first, we're not a kid counselor camp, even though we're called Camp of the Woods, as I've already mentioned to you, right? Where you will work 60 to 70 hours a week. Kid counselor camps, you're working 24/7 with the kiddos. Nothing wrong with that, but it's more rustic. It's more 24/7 where you're a parent in the bungalow with the kids, right? 60 to 70 hour a week, maybe more. We are not that way, right? However, we are still in ministry, all right? This is something that's common in ministry. You're going to work hard. And so all staff can expect to work 48 to 53 hours per week. It's hard work. Don't just breeze by it. They will feel a vibe. What's happening? Be like, it's hard work. Tell it to everybody. The precedent is equal. Wow, socially responsible. That's equal. Good. Moving right along. Still, there's significantly more free time than a kid counselor camp. Wow, really? And your free time, it's like college without the homework. It is, actually. I believe that. I lived it, man. Like, more often than not, we're having our staff struggle with FOMO, right? Anyone struggle with that? Oh, yeah, absolutely, I struggle with that. Yeah, but like we do a biblical self-care seminar in the summer because we value our staff having care, right? You see where I'm going? Objections. Any objection you can think to your job, maybe why you can't retain employees or whatever's going on, what can we do, at least in narrative, to address that head on in the onboarding process, the interview process, whatever have it, right? Do it. It is so essential. If they're skeptical, they're pragmatic, right, and they already just feel iffy about, truth and reason, you need to just be upfront about it and address it. But this is kind of like a really good recruiting way to approach it. You can't just say, yeah, it's cool. We'll work hard. I'm so sorry. It's going to be pretty tough. Anyways, you should work here, man. You're like, no, you got to address it with this idea of okay, narrative, right? Like, they're the hero. They're taking their advancement leverage. I'm choosing to be a part of a place. What does that mean to me? Purpose, right? All weaves together. But overall, that's really my closing thoughts, right? Again, I've covered a lot here, so I can have time for questions. But of course, we'll have discussion after too. But these are other things that I've seen in Generation Z. There's so much stereotype. There's so much just negativity about any young generation when they're coming up. And the most important thing I would tell you is oh my goodness, what a value young people can give to any organization. They give fresh ideas. They bring energy. They have such a willingness. If you hire the right people, they're so willing. Oh my gosh, pour into me, develop me, right? That's awesome for any work environment. It is essential, I would say. Because then also look at how football teams operate, right? The Bills, they were bad for a little bit of time. It's okay. But they had a lot of rookie talent and they developed it, right? Any good organization should be taking time and energy to understand and invest in the next generation of workers, no matter how annoying they can be. I know they're annoying. I've been annoying. Every generation, as I've read about this, I'm like, man, that's kind of annoying. Man, that's boomers. Oh, man. Or Gen X, classic, Really spend time on your own and really say, what is the best thing I can do? I would want to be seen and understood and valued anywhere I worked. And if this broader understanding of things can help you, just be centered and say, man, I understand these people a little bit better, and that's a great thing. And that understanding can translate into practical things that you can be doing. Again, but it's a privilege to serve Generation Z. I guess to be Gen Z, sure. But no matter what, see people at the individual level, and you'll see how your organization will prosper, really. So, any questions?